welcome to today's event. We've got a very exciting 45 minutes of content ahead of us. There's going to be some time at the end for questions, concerns, feelings, and we can talk about how we can support your teams integrate AI into your Zendesk workflows. We've seen it time and time again, how AI has transformed customer support teams into more productive and more fulfilled and more engaged in terms of how their agents are performing, how their customers are interacting, and just in general, how their admins are able to source joy in what they're doing. So by the end of this session, you should be able to learn how to integrate automation into your workflows, how to leverage AI to build your automation roadmap, and how to democratize Zendesk customization with AI. You're probably wondering who these lovely humans are in front of you. I'm Abby, I'm the go-to-market enablement lead here at Ultimate, and I am joined by my friend and good comrade here, Scott. Scott, would you be willing to introduce yourself for the crew?
Yes, hi, my name is Scott Dixon. I'm based here in New York, and I'm a customer engineer for Salto. So I help our customers onboard and implement Salto and really try to make sense of their complex change management process with critical business applications like Zendesk.
Awesome. Well, we're going to be hearing a lot about that as we go through. Just before we get into the content, I do have a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. We are on a webinar, so I don't think most of you can unmute yourselves, but please do talk to us in the chat. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're feeling, what's driving your joy, what's driving your excitement, what's driving your curiosity. Please do feel free to throw any questions in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to either integrate them into what we're talking about, or we'll handle them at the end of the Q&A section. And in case you do need to drop, we will be very sad. We love the engagement, but the recording will be sent in case you have any concerns or feelings that you want to learn about from what we're going to cover, which you miss, or you just want to re-listen to our voice afterwards. The choice is yours. Cool. So let's get into it. We are seeing so many trends and changes inside the AI space, inside the customer service space, and there's a few that we really want to touch on. So what we see here at Ultimate is that 56% of brands are actually looking to invest in AI in 2024. So that's a lot more than what we're seeing last year. And I think that's paramount by the fact of how many of you are also here as well. This seems to be a topic that people are interested in. We want to be a source of education for you, and we're super happy to be a part of it. But we're only one side of the coin. If we want to produce this for the market, we want to give this to the masses also have to be willing to receive it. And what we see is that 75% of consumers are actually happy to interact with generative AI in a support setting. We're going to talk a little bit about that as to what that means later on, but I think that's already a great sign to see how things are moving and changing in the world right now. So the 3 challenges that we want to talk to you about today come across 3 different stakeholders. We've got the challenge of customer satisfaction. Customers are always the center of everything we do. Scott, being an American, will always talk about how great customer service needs to be in order to drive loyalty. And if you see bad customer service, bad customer satisfaction, you're less likely to be loyal to a brand, less likely to be happy. We also have the challenge of an overwhelmed support team. I think probably quite a lot of you here today may be part of support teams, leading support teams, looking to support your support teams. We don't want them to feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed is not the emotion we're going for, but that is currently the challenge that we're seeing. So we want to make sure we can talk about how this can be improved. And then finally, we have the challenge of administrators, so technical debt and the configuration struggles and quests. So how can we make life easier for those behind the scenes, not necessarily those on the front line, but are able to build out that structure to make the other 2 pillars feel seamless and supported and not a challenge at all. So those are the challenges we're going to talk about and how AI can help solve those. So that's what I'm excited about for today. Does anyone have a favorite challenge that they're looking to learn about? If you want to throw it into the chat, challenge 1, challenge 2, challenge 3, just in terms of which one you're most interested in. I have my favorite, but I'll keep that to the end. See the chat going. Challenge number 1. I love that challenge number 1 is first. So that's great. But also see number 3s and 2s coming in as well. Awesome. Love that. So let's get into
Quite a
it.
few twos.
That's true. You don't have to choose, or you can save judgment until the end once we've talked about all of them. That's very fair, Scott. Very, very fair. Awesome. So what does this look like? If we blend this into a very possible scenario, if we try and give you a story to talk about or a scenario to think about, what does this mean? Well, at the moment, we're seeing that customer support is having a large change right now, and this is partly driven by the advancements in AI, but also how this is changing the ways that people are supporting or working with customer support. We want to see how this can streamline and enhance customer efficiency, the ways that we can embed in processes and provide more personalized assistance to users. So as a result, what we're seeing is customer expectations have been maximized. They're always wanting more. They're always wanting to get the best out of every interaction that they're operating under. They've got less time, less energy for any type of mistakes, slowness, inefficiency. So how can we contribute to a more proactive and anticipatory approach for working with customers? So if we look at, say, Black Friday, for example, we've just had Black Friday. We see that the sales have grew by 3.5% globally. So that's a lot of money that's being spent across the holiday season. When people are spending a lot of money, there's usually a lot of activity behind that. So there's lots of customers looking forward to their new air fryer, their new iPhone, socks. What do people buy on Black Friday? I know I bought an air fryer and socks. I did buy a new iPhone, but those were the things that I was really excited about. And when people are excited, they've just bought something. The last thing they want is any problems. But when those problems do happen, they want support and they want it to be efficient. The unfortunate thing is that sometimes this is where the overwhelming can come in, because you have overstretched support teams. You have dissatisfied customers that keep coming back and not being happy with the resolution. You see an impact on what that then means for the bottom line, because people do returns or they impact your brand loyalty. There's a massive backlog, which then makes people more unhappy. What we see is that 80% of customers have actually said that if they have one bad experience, they don't then work with the brand anymore. They just essentially defect from that particular company. So we want to make sure that that's not happening. If we can look at this particular scenario in terms of the volumes, the satisfaction, the topics, we want to make sure that we're able to counter this. So some of you may be in the scenario right now, post Black Friday, pre-lead up to Christmas, that you're seeing a lot of extra volumes. So we want to see how we can counter that. So the first challenge around reduced customer satisfaction, what we're seeing is if you can build out this customer loyalty, if you can make your customers and your employees happy, what this actually means is you get a 5 to 10% improvement in your revenue, and you're actually able to reduce costs. So what does this mean? If we can counter this challenge around making customers happy, this is going to impact your bottom line in a positive way. You're able to make sure that you're going to have higher conversion rates. You're going to make sure that customers are more satisfied. So how do you reduce this? By not having those large backlog times, not getting back to people super late, especially around simple questions. Sometimes you just want an answer and you don't want to wait. You don't want to go onto a second channel. You don't want to get involved with somebody else. You don't want to pick up the phone, write an email, unknown wait times. You want an instant answer. You want to make sure that you're able to produce a good result and get people answers quickly, because people want answers within 5 minutes. Typically, that's what we're seeing here at Ultimate. So we would say, handling this challenge around reducing customer satisfaction, the challenge of reducing customer satisfaction by countering that to give better customer satisfaction, that's going to be challenge number 1. And I'll show you how to solve that in just a moment. But I've got one other challenge I want to talk to you about before I talk about solutions. We need to know the pain before we can talk about the gain. So the other piece is these overwhelmed support teams. So what we see is 65% of agents are just feeling overwhelmed with the amount of inquiries, the surges, the increased workload, the more requests that they're getting. It could be different volumes. It could be people being out sick, people on vacation. This is a common time for people to just have lives, right? Like Scott and I have also just come back from vacation, and we know there's always a backlog coming when we get back. And we want to make sure we're alleviating that stress so that people can take that time. So we want to make sure that we're supporting the overwhelmed support teams so that there's no backlog for customers and that they also can produce the best results. Happy employees, happy results. But for you, Scott, have you ever experienced a particularly overwhelming time in your time as a support agent or admin?
Definitely. I've been on a number of support teams with like all different sizes where, you know, it was a support team of 1 to 5 versus a support team of 25 versus a couple hundred. And there were definitely times on each one of those where feeling overwhelmed by just like the sheer number of requests coming in. So one example I was thinking of was I was used to be on a support team where our customers used to run into this networking issue that prevented them from using our software. And the frustrating thing was it wasn't directly related to the product. It was a environment specific, something that the customer had on their system. But we really wanted to make sure that we wanted to unblock them. So these became really key requests, but the problem was the volume. There were so many that were coming in. So we started leveraging macros in Zendesk that would outline how the agents can guide them through troubleshooting. But it was still one of those cases where it became almost a joke. Like you got one of those cases and it's like, okay, there goes my day. So we definitely kind of felt that that not only the number of cases, but the complexity of cases growing over time.
Yeah, that's definitely a struggle. I know, like, that's a story lots of support teams will resonate with. For me, I worked in customer support for an e-commerce brand, and in between Black Friday and Christmas, we had a backlog of 13 days. And as an agent, you just didn't know what to do because one, we were commissioned based off of satisfaction scores. People are not going to be happy that you took 13 days to respond to a basic question. Half the time, most of those were resolved. So you're like, do I send a response and risk that someone's then going to reply back and be mad that it took me so long and it was already solved 10 days ago? Or they've been waiting for 13 days to blow up because it's still not been resolved. It just felt so horrible. And you just didn't want to work on those tickets. You just already knew that it was going to impact your general mood because people are going to turn around and say, you suck. And it was like, I can't disagree with you, but I really wish you wouldn't say that. So the struggle was real. And I don't want that for anyone. And this is hopefully what we can talk about today, is how AI can make this less of a reality. So if we were to talk about how this works, how this is solved using Ultimate, let me come out of this presentation, because I think as much as presentations are great and we have a fantastic designer here at Ultimate and our slides look stunning, it's never as good as when you can actually get into the product and see what it looks like. So I can actually take you behind the curtain in terms of what we here at Ultimate do. So let's take some common topics we have here in our Ultimate system. I'm just going to zoom out for a little while in case you've never seen Ultimate before. Maybe people in the chat want to tell me if they have, but if you haven't, what we're able to do is outline different key repetitive topics that your customers are asking about and build out those responses so that they come instantly. They don't need to go to your agents and they fire off a macro. Macros are great because they do so many different things, but you still need to action them, right? Whereas with Ultimate, what we're able to do is send instant responses straight away without any agent intervention. But at the same time, if agent intervention is needed, and I'll come to that in a moment, how you can make it easier for the agent. Okay, so this is what we're looking at right now, is the possibility for us here at Ultimate to build out that process, the ways that an agent would probably respond, but taking that manual effort away from them. So now if I zoom in, what I'm able to see here is that I'm looking at a topic around account verification issues. Say you're a company that you need to make sure that a customer has verified where they live or their address. That's the same thing. Also what their phone number is, for example. There may be issues that people have. There's always issues when you involve technology. So there's a few different things that we might do. We might ask them for certain information, like check the open items that haven't been verified. We can then go into a system, figure out what's for that particular user what's not been done and share this dynamically and give them the answer that that would look like. And this is quite a small flow, but it probably doesn't tell you what it actually does, right? You're just looking at these little blocks and going, okay, Abby, I trust you. You have a British accent. You sound trustworthy. And I love that that's your response, but let me actually show you what it looks like. So if I test this bot right now, I already got it built out from what I did earlier. So let's restart it so you know that this is live and exactly how it should be. So I am having issues verifying my account. So what I'm doing here is giving it a typical question that a user might give that your support agents might receive. Sorry, you're having issues verifying your account. What would you like to do? Check your open items, or you're having an issue actually uploading your documents? I can choose either of these options. Those are the two main problems that I would see. But I'm going to check my open items. What it's going to do is render all of the ones for my account, say I'm signed in, that are missing. It's going to display those to me to tell me, hey, we don't actually have your origin of funds verification. We don't have your residency verification. We don't have your ID. This is important information. We need to get this. If you need to learn more about it, you can click the Find Out More button, and it's going to give you a response generated from your knowledge base. One thing we hear here at Ultimate is, I don't want to build out replies. I don't want to have to write every single reply when it's already in my knowledge base. Great. Give us your knowledge base. We'll connect it, and it's going to be able to produce the information that you need in a nice way, styled to your brand persona. So here it's able to tell you, like, to verify your residence, these are the details that we would need. Let us know if you're having more issues. If you want to check other items, so to go back to that carousel that we saw, that nice, beautiful carousel with all of the images and the buttons, we can go back to it, or we can say, oh, good. This is going to counter most of those repetitive questions that your users are receiving, because it's going to give them the information that they could have found themselves on the knowledge base or on your FAQ portal if they knew where it was or read it. But in some cases, there are going to be times where you actually need to get an agent involved. Completely fair. So what we do here, depending on which flow we're in, you can either immediately escalate people to a live agent, or you can choose, actually, someone's going to follow up with you via email later on. We need to really look into this, and you're not going to get an instant answer. That's totally fine. What we can do is set expectations. We can set expectations in a few different ways based on when agents are working. If agents aren't working right now because it's the weekend or it's a bank holiday, we don't want to be like, someone's going to come back to you in 2 hours. It's going to set the wrong expectation, bad customer satisfaction. We don't love this. But if we can say, hey, people aren't working right now, what I can tell you is these are the hours that we work, you're going to get responsive in that time, then everyone knows where they stand. What we can also do is check to see whether or not we've got key information that we need. So for creating a ticket, we need an email address. We need to know who we're going to contact afterwards. What we can already do is see if we know the user's email address or not. If we do, we don't have to ask them for it, because I think everyone's been in the situation where a chatbot's been like, so you've given me all of this information that I'm just not listening to. Repeat yourself, but in a series of questions that I want you to answer when I ask. And you're just like, oh, I've done this already. We don't want that. We want to make sure we're reducing repetitive effort, not just for your agents and for your team, but for the user as well, so that they are happy. If that exists, great. We just instantly escalate them to your agents, either via chat or via email, depending on how you want to follow up. And if you don't have that, we can collect that email address as well. So that's 2 ways that we're able to build out clear and impactful ways of communicating with your customers so that they are satisfied and reducing the workload for your agents. But how do we know if it's any good? Trust? I think trust. Scott is nodding, but he knows I'm joking. No, you don't just have to trust us, friends. We have a dashboard. We're going to show you how it works. So what you're able to see is the impact that your support bot, new member of your team, is able to have. How many conversations are they fully deflecting that your agents don't even need to touch, that are completely handled, they've gone to a meaningful resolution, that they have achieved exactly what they want, and that your agents didn't need to deal with it. Amazing. We're able to see that here, as well as what percentage of conversations are escalated. Cool. But that's not deep enough, right? We need to know more. We need to know whether or not those conversations ended in a meaningful way, that the user got key information, they validated that they had a good time. We always want to check to see whether or not we received confirmation that they've fully resolved their inquiry versus us just giving them self-service support, which is what we have here with our resolution states. And then we can also check to see what percentage of conversations are being escalated. This is going to give us two key pieces of information. What level of conversations are going up into escalation? And also, how are things changing over time? Do we see that over Black Friday, every single conversation gets escalated? God, I'd hope not. But if that did, that would give you cause for concern, right? That would tell you that, hey, actually, we need to make some changes here. We also would want to check to see whether or not this actually turned a different color. We have one other type of status here for our resolutions called not resolved. If we saw that lots of people were saying it wasn't resolved, but it didn't go to an agent, that tells us potentially our escalation pathway is too long, and we want to make sure we're getting people the answers that they need. Because the whole point they come to support is to get support. So we want to make sure maybe we can follow up with them elsewhere. So that's something else we can see here. But I'm not done. Sorry, I love game shows, so I feel like I sometimes go a little bit game showy, but I feel like you're going to enjoy it. So one other thing we're able to see here as well is the conversation types and how they are impacted. So whether or not this is the first intent, what rate of automation it received, how many conversations were escalated, and whether or not there was any errors that you need to look into. Sometimes things break, doesn't happen very often, but you do need to know whether or not that has happened and where is the source so you can quickly fix it. So here you're able to see how this is progressing over time and understand whether or not there's any key trends that you need to look into, and already go directly into the conversations where maybe you can make changes, make iterations. But there's one more thing I want to show you, because this just gives you an overall view. But how do you know how customers actually converse with your bot? What are the stages that they go through? What are the typical flows? We have something here called the conversation journeys. Conversation journeys tells you how customers migrate through your bot. What are the typical flows of the journey? And also whether or not they try and break that journey or they drop off early. So what I mean by break the journey, you saw that lovely decision tree type structure. We like to hope that people follow it, that like we've built them the path, this is the way through the woods, we're going to get you to where you need to be. But sometimes people decide to walk off the path and do exactly what they want to do. We need to know where that happens. So people have come down our account verification path, but actually they wanted to talk about their order status, for example, and they go somewhere else. So that's what we want to check. So here we're able to see which conversations started where. Most of the time, you'd like to hope it starts with your welcome reply. That's your nice little welcome message where you say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I can do for you. How can I help? Sometimes, I think it happens more often than we'd like to admit, people instantly enter the chat and go, I want to speak to a human. I'm not ready to deal with you. So that can also be a large portion of your replies, but you need to know what that is, right? Where do people start and where do people end up? Where do they go most often? We see that order status is our most popular reply. And then do they go straight to our satisfaction scores or do they go somewhere else? Do we see that actually most of the time someone goes to a completely different flow afterwards? Why is that? Is that something that we need to improve in terms of our design or our training? This is what this page is all about, is giving you that insight into how you can improve and where and what that pathway looks like. So a lot of key information there. So lots of fun information for you to ascertain. What does this mean in terms of the two challenges? You thought I forgot about the challenges, but I didn't. So the two challenges we were talking about, customer satisfaction. We're looking to reduce the time in which it takes for a user to get a good response. We're trying to give them key information in a way that's tailored to how your users or your support team would talk to your customers. we're trying to make sure that it's in a easy to understand manner and that they get exactly what they need. And you can learn this actually from the chat, whether or not someone's having a good time, by building in CSAT flows or just checking based off of where they are in the pathway if they've had a good time. Hopefully that's enough for them to be happy that they get the answers that they need, or they get escalated to a member of their team in a fast and easy manner. But what about the agents? We don't want to make more work for them so that they feel even more overwhelmed. We want to take that overwhelm away. So how can we do this? Reducing those repetitive inquiries, reducing the number of inquiries at all that even make it to them, to get them to a high deflection rates and get users resolutions without these repetitive questions that they just fire off very quick answers for and don't even think about. They can actually spend way more time on those complex cases, or even building out better flows based off of the information they're able to garner from our dashboards. So that's some key information I wanted to share with you there. And that's what I think Ultimate is able to really do for your users. So what does Ultimate do? I've shown you, but I haven't told you. Ultimate is an AI-powered customer support platform. We work with a few different customers in order to help them achieve their dreams of having a happy customer base and also a happy support team. And what we aim to do is give you access to different types of AI technology, be it generative AI, leveraging your knowledge source, your FAQ page to create content based off of your typical questions, but also our natural language processing to understand how your users speak to you and cluster it into key topics across 109 different languages so that you can have 24/7, 365 global support and automate as many conversations as you want. We typically see 60%, but the more power you give the bot, the more powerful it is. So we want to make sure that you can achieve your wildest dreams so that your agents can deliver the best, most outstanding customer support in the cases that actually need it. So that's 2 challenges down, but we have 3, right? So I think, Scott, are you ready to bring us home on the 3rd challenge and how we're actually able to solve it?
Yes, ready. And just let me share my screen here in a second and I can take over as soon as I can find where the Zoom window went. I really want to talk about this challenge around CS platforms that are becoming more powerful and user-friendly, but that comes with a price. And that price is the process of configuring these systems is growing increasingly complex. This increasing complexity is making changes trickier. With so many intertwined configurations, you really have to think carefully about making change to production that won't impact your end users. For example, adding a new field or deleting a field might end up breaking a trigger, might end up breaking an automation that could have a cascading impact to not only your customers, but your agents as well. And this ultimately leads to slower delivery times of not only critical business requests like updating a field or creating a new form, but also for adopting new features in your CS stack. Every change that gets made then increases that complexity that can lead to hidden errors and technical debt. Abby, I'm curious because we see this a lot with our customers where they struggle with making changes because it's almost like they're really nervous about making a change. They don't know the impact of making that change. Is this something that you've experienced either in current role or past role?
Yeah, definitely in a past role. I used to manage a support team and we had a way of doing things and we knew it wasn't the best way, but to make changes, we knew that the problems around change would come where we'd probably have to iterate or there'd probably be a mistake or something wouldn't quite happen. So we didn't, because we didn't want to impact the status quo, the BAU, the general like day-to-day, because we just didn't know what the repercussions were going to be. And because we didn't have like a space to like test or validate, it was a very much a 0-1 decision. You had to do one or the other and live with the consequences. And yeah, we definitely lived in a little bit too much fear.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. So I kind of want to go into a little bit about how Salto helps that, or how Salto can help with that problem, and also how we can how AI is starting to play a role here. Now, a little bit about us. Salto is a DevOps platform for configuration management of critical business applications like Zendesk. Salto allows you to not only make changes faster, but to ultimately lower the risk of making a change to production, so you can adopt those new features faster without that risk. So what exactly does the Salto platform do? So Salto allows Zendesk teams to get full visibility into their environments, like I mentioned earlier, where you can see every configuration, where it's being used to understand the impact of that change. So for example, Salto can show you the dependencies of a trigger or where a field is being used across your environment. So before updating that field or updating that trigger, you can come into Salto and quickly understand the potential impact of making that change. Salto can also help sync your sandbox by deploying changes to production quickly and with all the necessary dependencies. Just like Abby, you were mentioning, not having a place to test, that sandboxes allow you to do that in Zendesk. But how good is a sandbox if it's not populated with all the same configurations that you've got in production? So Salto can help you keep all of that in sync. And at the same time, Salto can compare the environment. So you can compare a sandbox and a production environment to make sure you've got all your changes moved across. And then Salto also gives you the ability to version control your configurations, so you can maintain an accurate change log for all the changes that are occurring in your environment. Now, Salto does all this by turning your Zendesk configurations into a set of NOCL files. Now, what is a NOCL file? A NOCL is a configuration language that shows configurations across many different business applications in a human readable text. The great thing about this is that NOCL is going to have the same syntax regardless if the configuration is coming from Zendesk or another business application that you're using. Now, NOCL is declarative, which means that it describes the end state of a configuration, which means that we're able to use that in Salto, or a platform can use that file to then create, modify, or delete the configurations themselves in Zendesk. So this is all leading up to, how can AI help with this process? The NOCL files is what ultimately allows us to truly democratize Zendesk customization with AI. Since Salto is representing your Zendesk configurations using a human readable file syntax, which is NOCL, we can leverage it with LLMs or large language models to allow AIs and to assist us in analyzing, understanding, or even dynamically generating configurations from plain language prompts. So we are early in our AI journey, but I want to show our first AI feature, which is called Explain, and it does just that. It explains a complex configuration in a single click. So I'm going to demo this feature as well as just give a quick tour of Salto for further context. So let me just jump into the Salto platform here. So here I am in my Salto demo account. This is our this is how Salto will represent, for example, a trigger. And at the very bottom, you can see all of the dependencies of a particular trigger. So here I can see that we're referencing a group, showing a ticket field. Now, anything in Salto that's underlying, you can also click through to see how it's set up. So for example, this ticket field, I can see how it's set up, and then I can also see where it's being used. So this is where that impact analysis piece comes into play, where you can see where it's being used to really understand the potential impact of a change. Now, Salto can also help you deploy those changes from one environment to another. So for example, here I've got a macro selected where I want to deploy the changes that I made to this macro from a sandbox environment to a production environment, and I can select individual changes. Now, in this case, the update that I made to this macro is I've added on this particular field. Now, what happens if I haven't actually added that field into my production environment yet? No problem there. Salto is going to flag that we've got a required dependency. So as part of the deployment process, Salto allows you to make sure that you've got all of your required dependencies, making sure that you can seamlessly move a configuration from a sandbox to a production environment. Now, once you deploy, Salto is going to keep a full history of all your deployments, and you can also push all those changes up to a Git repository. If you're not familiar with Git, Git is a version control system typically used for software, but because we are using returning all these configurations into a flat file structure, that's what allows Salto to be able to leverage something like Git. Now, knowing that context, I want to jump back to this trigger that I had here before. So because all of the configurations are being stored in those NOCL files, which is a human readable declarative syntax, This is what allows Salto to leverage AI for one of our first features called Explain. So all you got to do is just click this Explain button, and it's going to automatically generate a quick explanation of what this trigger does. And this trigger is basically going to present in even more human readable, clear language what exactly this trigger does. So you can imagine if you're a Zendesk admin, maybe you're not familiar with, you're not closely monitoring exactly what each member of your team is doing in terms of updating the triggers, the macros, the forms. Salto will allow you to come in here, click explain, and now you've got a very quick explanation of what's going on. So that's allowing, without my very, very detailed knowledge of what how exactly triggers are set up in Zendesk. It doesn't matter. You can come into Salto. Salto will explain those for you. Now, in the future, we're going to be leveraging AI even more to allow for ultimately the generation of these configurations, just putting in a prompt, creating that Knuckle file, which will in turn create the configuration in Zendesk. Now, going back to just to kind of review what we talked about. So what is AI first customer support teams? What can that help us to achieve? So better customer retention and loyalty with an improved NPS score. Improved agent productivity and happiness ultimately leads to happier customers with your happier agents, and then more visibility and less errors, better knowledge retention. So at this point, wanted to jump into any Q&A, any questions that might have come up during the session. And I think we got a question prompt for both of us. What other apps do you support besides Zendesk? I'd be happy to start off here. So with Salto, we support Zendesk. We also support other key critical business applications like Salesforce, NetSuite, Jira, and Okta. The idea here is to be able to make that change management process better, not only for your customer support apps, but any other internal business applications that your company is leveraging. What about Ultimate?
Yeah, with Ultimate, so from the CRM perspective, technically we have the possibility to connect to any, because we have the possibility for you to build your own connection. But out of the box, we support Zendesk, Salesforce, Freshworks, and Intercom as well. So we have those, and then of course, if we want to connect to other apps for, say, e-commerce based use cases, or for your payment type use cases, we can connect to any of those. We actually have a built-in team here at Ultimate for customer engineering, so they can build out the connections for you. But then we also made a no-code integration builder. So same as how you can connect to any CRM you want, you can connect to any system that you want, either through us, or if you have the resources in-house, to build out to any system that you might want. Nice.
And actually, I see a question come in here, Abby, from Steven, saying that if new, he actually tested out Salto to deploy changes from sandbox to production, asking if new dynamic content is added and the item name differs from the item placeholder. The new dynamic content with the placeholder name in production is not identical to sandbox. Is the topic known? That's a really interesting, very technical question, Stephen. I like when those come up. I'd have to double check if the topic is known. For anyone who's not familiar with Salto, we can identify the configurations across environments, typically using names. So if the name might be different, that's probably where that mismatch is coming up. Stephen, I might, if it's all right, I'll reach out to you after the webinar to see if I can get a little bit more information about the issue that you ran into, just to make sure that it's something that we know about.
Nice. Okay, well, we're 10 minutes towards the top of the hour. I think, I'm not sure if there's any more questions coming in. If anyone's typing, quickly select all, copy paste, and just be like, no, me, I'm still typing, and come back to us so that we know that you're there and that you want to ask us a question. But otherwise, we're happy to give you some minutes back in your day, whichever you would prefer. So I'll give a small pause now to see if anyone's just like, no, please, I have a question. Other variants of that phrase are also welcome. Awesome. Okay, so it seems like no more questions are coming in. That either tells me one or two things. You loved everything that Scott and I said. It makes complete sense, and you are well on your way to being 100% happy and knowing how AI can solve your CX challenges, or we've overwhelmed you. We've given you way too much information and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with this. What I can offer is both Scott and I, we're available outside of the session. This is not the only time you can connect with us, or alternatively, going onto our respective websites, choosing other humans at our respective companies you may wish to speak to. That's also available to you. So please do feel free to reach out to us on any of the channels and let us know if you have any questions, concerns, or feelings. But otherwise, I've very much enjoyed myself. Scott, is there anything you would like to say to the friends?
No, thank you everyone for joining. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. And like Abby mentioned, any questions, we'd be happy to connect with you. And looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes and where we are with AI in the future.
Awesome. Thank you ever so much, friends. Take care. Have a great rest of the day and happy holidays.